it's Friday the 5th of November. So from tomorrow the 6th, we've got basically 4 weeks of campaigning. I'm about to hit the ground running. You'll see leaflets. You'll start to see signs appearing. The last week's been pretty hectic, getting nominations finalised, getting the paperwork done, then doing the ballot draw yesterday. So we find out who's running and the order they appear in the ballot sheet. Liberal Party, or de facto Liberal Party candidate Ben Zhang, who runs the Chinese herbal medicine place on Darling Street, running with an independent group, sort of last minute. So there's 5 groups running. And in the order they appeared at the ballot draw on Thursday, Bugger Lugs comes last. So going left to right, Group A will be Ben Zhang. And as I say, he's not an endorsed Liberal Party candidate, but he's a member of the Liberal Party. John Stamlis, independent group, is Group B. Group C will be KB Shetty on the Greens. Group D is Darcy Byrne, the ALP, Jack Robertson, running up the arse end. So we're going to do a donkey vote. They tell me being on the left-hand side, you get that donkey vote, left, right, go backwards, start it right. Anyway, we're on and we're in. A quick word on that. I'm running as a group of 3, like all the others are. My 2 running mates are friends of mine. They're not particularly actively campaigning. The reason you run with a group of 3 is to give you that above-the-line voting capacity. It's not as cynical as it sounds. It's just a bit of pragmatics. My 2 running mates, Nav Brass, a friend of mine who lives over in Annandale. And so that's a good source of information for local stuff there. He works for DPI, Department of Planning, so it's a good source of information about how state government works. I mean, very properly, so there's no inside sort of info or anything. My number 3 is Graham McDowell, an old flying mate of mine I joined the Air Force with. He lives in Lilyfield. Been affected by the tunnelling for WestConnect, so he's a good way of just keeping me, because I'm fairly positive about WestConnect. He's a good way of saying, come and listen to this, right? I guess I just wanted to get a bit of a geographic spread. They're not really actively running, but they'll be a good part of my sort of information base and support base. So that's just who they are, if people are curious. But it's really about me. It's all about me coming last on the ballot. What I really wanted to talk about briefly was preferences, because I know that's been, I'm not overstating my own significance. I don't really know how many votes I'll get. A few hundred, hopefully. I've got a few hundred friends. A lot of talk about me being a Labor Party stooge, and I've said before I'm not. Greens think I'm a Liberal Party stooge, and I'm more, I'm probably more pro-development than either Labor or the Greens, or at least I'm more open about it or positive about it. But, so I've decided not to go with any preferences. There might have been options. I think there would have been options for me to do maybe reciprocal deals with one or the parties, or maybe Labor, maybe, I don't know, perhaps if I'd pursued that. I think probably the most honest thing for me to do, and the fairest, is just to say, no, I won't distribute my preferences at all. Preference deals are only what, nobody has to follow them. It's only a matter of those people who follow a party instructions, right? So everyone's got you can put 1, 2, 3 wherever you want, but I think, and I don't know how many votes it might have cost me to not issue preferences. Everybody's welcome to send me your preferences, by all means. I guess my pitch is saying, and that's consistent with me saying, look, I could work with any of the candidates. Even though I rang Benji, we had a quick chat on the phone, and it seemed fine. There's plenty in the Liberal Party ticket that I can admire and respect. I like, the nominal Liberal Party philosophy, which is self-sufficiency, work hard. I'm not anti-capitalism, I'm not anti-markets. I think profits doesn't have to be an evil motive. It's a great way of generating new ideas, great way of jobs, pays people's mortgage. I work, we all work, solves problems. So I'm not anti-capitalist, I'm not anti-big business, I'm not even anti-development, certainly. One of the great things at the moment we're in at the moment is that development can actually be part of the climate change solution. Development and sustainability in the environment, they're not natural enemies. Some new developments are much more, infinitely more ecologically sustainable than the old sort of higgledy-piggledy. That applies to things like tollways too, by the way. I'd rather have cars whizzing, cruising through underneath us than changing gears 16 times up and down Victoria Road, churning out shit, with a torque grinding the gears. I mean, that's just an example, but, building design, urban design, water sensitive sort of urban design, integration, sustainability, circular economies. New development can bring a lot of solutions to environment stuff. So being pro-development doesn't necessarily mean being anti-environment. Anyway, we'll talk a lot about that. So I could quite happily pick bits out of the Libs philosophy. Lots of Libs I can't stand them. You know, the Liberal Party's gone in a certain direction, very much more socially conservative, much more excluding, moralising, browbeating, all of that stuff. That's just what things happen. So there's plenty I can work with there. As far as the other parties, you know, Labor Party, I've said, you know, I broadly, this is Labor Party town. Balmain's, you can't live in Balmain for any length of time and not understand the role that the Labor Party plays. It's not silly for anyone to pretend otherwise. Had a bit to do with the Labor Party when I was involved with Amnesty, a bit of crossover. I know Darcy Byrne, mostly through live music. The Grateful Dad's my band. We've played the Back to Balmain, we've played the Balmain Tigers water polo, or the water polo Derby Day, Balmain Fun Run. We do lots of fundraisers for Birch Grove School. So we do a lot of community stuff, and Darcy's often there. Darcy's well known as being a ebullient supporter of live music, does submissions to Parliament, pushing. He's always supportive of the band. I like him. It's hard not to like him. I mean, I have friends of mine who don't like him, for all sorts of reasons. So I can't say I know him well, and I wouldn't, in a second dream of telling the Labor Party how to suck eggs, I would say that on the downside. I think Darcy was a good mayor, in the sense that he will prosecute the case for the council, so it's a state government really well. I mean, never get between Darcy and taking credit for something, but that's a politician for you. But at the moment he's saying, look, Perrottet, the Premier's admitted that it was wrong to dud Inner West Council and Canterbury and a few other councils out of potential $25-30 million funding through the Community Stronger funds, all this pork barrelling that's now blowing up in the Libs' face. Back when that was happening, at the same time, by the way, Darcy was getting done over by the CAT, and I've done a post on that, you can look at that, but Darcy was in there with Kalash 4 and others sticking it up the LNP saying this is just not fair. So he prosecutes that well. So when he's saying now, I think on his post that, look, it's good to see Perrottet acknowledge that, credit where credit's due, right? I think he obviously loves the Republic of the Inner West, okay, bit over the top, but he's always down there at Leichhardt Oval. The thing about the Labor Party is it is plugged into those constituencies that I think probably are being left behind a bit as the demographic changes. There's blokes like me, blow-ins like me, that, you know, prices go up, and so it is the footy clubs, it is the RSL, the bowling clubs, it is the Balmain Association, the Annandale Association, some of the old workers, you know, organisations, the aged care centres, all the sort of fabric, the council itself. You know, so there's that kind of part. So that's a good side. The bad side, obviously, the thing that's pissed everyone off so much. You know, the cynicism of the power sharing deal just to keep the Greens out, and the fighting that goes on between the Greens and Labor. I'm not pure. You can be pure as an independent. Yeah, Jack's so pure and not doing preferences. Okay, I can do that. You've got to make deals. Right? I get that. Parties do. I think there's a point you don't cross, though. You make deals on policy, and I'll be happy to compromise and look at things on merits. I think power sharing arrangements, and even there you make alliances with like-minded, you know, it might be the Nats and the Libs, or it might be the Greens, you would have thought Labor and the Greens. I think Labor and Liberal, I know they've done it before, and Labor and Liberal, it's sort of like your brother and your sister getting married. It's just wrong. It's wrong. It just doesn't, and I think it's not just wrong for Labor voters. It's wrong for Liberal voters too. You vote for a Liberal Party, you might hate the Labor. Oops, suddenly they're in. It was always going to end up in tears, especially with a figure like Julie Passley. It's blown up, and Labor's going to have to cop that. And it's blown up for the council as well. It's not good for the Greens, it's not good for Labor, it's not good for Liberals, it's not good for Julie Passley, it's not good for anyone. I think you draw a line. So that's the downside. Two parties have government, so that's the alternatives, you know, Labor, Lib. If you're going to go into coalition, go with each other. So anyway, that's, as I said, it's not my job to tell the Labor Party how to suck eggs, and I shouldn't get above my station. But so that's the downside. Greens, same thing. Plenty in the Greens I admire and like. Obviously, I do energy sustainable policy, and there's lots in the Greens platform on that score. Electric vehicles, more sustainable water, circular economies, better waste management, all of these sort of technocratic problem-solving based things. Better use of stormwater harvesting. We're really lucky. Inner West is bigger now. We're really well placed to do some really sexy stuff. Stormwater harvesting, lots of like canals, Hawthorne Canal, dodgy as, but you can do stuff because we control a lot of the stormwater stuff, councils, but we're plugged in, and at scale now we've got pros who are plugged in with Sydney Water, health departments, plugged in with organisations like the Parramatta River Catchment Group, the Coastal Councils Group, all sort of working together. So a lot of those technical problems and policy problems, which the Greens are big on, they're a really good way to get into transition, and they're a great way to do it without politicising climate change, without isolating people, without dividing it along the old climate change wars. Because lots of people who may be a bit iffy about climate change, who may kind of hate being lectured about emissions, or might raise arguments about what China's doing or what can we do in Australia. Give them a problem to solve. Let's get in and make a better solution to keeping our parks beautifully green in the middle of a frigging drought. Recycling. Everyone can get on and have a go at that. And so there's lots of that practical. EVs. Everyone likes a bike ride. Even car drivers, as long as you keep them separate. There are ways you can solve these problems that don't need to be polarising and divided. So we're at that juncture. That's the good thing about the Greens, because they're moving that way. Some of them are moving that way. Where the Greens tend to lose me, and they are becoming more, in New South Wales, they've always been a bit ideological, more so than other Greens parties. The old watermelons joke, commies on the inside, green on the outside. It's a bit cruel, but I tend to see them as like blue-green algae, cyanobacterium, it's all green on the surface and blue deep under. That's just being a bit cheeky. I think the Greens do tend to start to lose people, maybe like me and lots of others, when they get a bit too ideological on some of the other aspects of their platform. LGBTQI stuff, Black Lives Matter, Indigenous argument. I mean, it's not that they're illegitimate, they're important arguments, and absolutely, again, I'm not teaching the Greens how to suck it. It's just where I tend to back away. It gets a bit aggressive and it gets a bit excluding and polarising. I think a good example for me a couple of years ago was when the Greens, there was a factional fight going on between environmentalist Greens and the ideological Greens. That's factions like any party. A bloke called Jeremy Buckingham, probably don't know him, he's one of their MPs, and he was Tasmanian boy, came out, he's a wood chipper, I think he'd done work in wood chipping, moved to Orange for it. He was a frontline campaigner, big campaigner, like chain yourself to a bulldozer type thing. But he also had the capacity to talk across stakeholder groups, like talk to farmers, talk to wood chippers, talk their language, and actually get people inside the tent. I think, I may be wrong, that he was quite instrumental in the lock the gates, the coal seam stuff, and that's where people like Alan Jones were jumping on board that, right? It's Jones. And to me, I thought he was effective, and I thought he was pragmatic, but also capable of being uncompromising, blah, blah, blah. The key to climate change is getting people inside the tent, right? And, the Greens went after him on sexual assault stuff and anyway, I don't know with smoke and fire, but no charges came out. He left the party. So they lost one of their best inclusive campaigners, and I guess where the Greens and I part ways is that I see climate change as like a country working bee, right? You say, let's get together on Saturday at the school, we'll make a playground for the kids. Everyone can bring some skill to the party. Don't have to agree, might hate each other's guts, but this person's really good at, fixing recycling. And it might be a crazy right-wing loony, but he's good at doing that. This person's a bleeding heart lefty, but really good at getting the best out of people, or coming up with policy ideas, or there's just so much that we can do, and in Inner West in particular, we've got all skill sets. And I think if we can get to a point where the politics of it doesn't matter, we can focus on just making a good playground for the kids, That's what I would love to be part of, because there's so many good ideas bouncing around in the mix already. Lots of them are the Greens ideas, so I could get excited about it. So happy to work with him. John's done the same thing. John's been around 15 years. A lot of respect. The more I try to get a campaign going as an independent, the more respect I have. He's done some good work on the precinct committees. He's been good on liners, advocates well. He's developed a really strong support base. And John's big on saying, let's get the parties out of politics. Well, I'm not sending preferences anywhere, John, so hey. Where John and I part company is on, I suppose, de-amalgamation. John's been pretty instrumental in pushing the referendum, and I've been open. Of all the candidates, I'm the only one saying, vote no. I can go and see my video on this. There's plenty of reasons why I think amalgamation is a good thing, starting to work. Again, to do with economies of scale, but to do with clout at state government level, to do with our capacity at a bigger size, to deal with Sydney Water, deal with New South Wales Water, deal with the Foreshore Authority, deal with the various stat groups around the place with some sort of grunt. We bring a bit of muscle to the table, plus just the technical skills we can command at a bigger council. There's some very, very good people there. I've done a bit of work with other councils. Parramatta's a good one. You know, they've got a fantastic track record on using council mechanisms to get good outcomes out of developers. Helen Papathanassi, our very famous kind of environmental guru there, who's done brilliant work with trade-offs of, floor space ratio for, like say, we'll give you a development faster if you hit higher benchmarks on some of these sustainability issues. Problem solving. Blacktown Council's done some great work on pushing RMS for changes to tree policy on urban roads so that we can help solve cooling. The reason most roads don't have trees isn't because evil developers, it's because road safety, right? There's rules, so we can change that, tweak that. Road sharing. Penrith does great work on heat mitigation. There's a guy called Sebastian Forch out there who is a academic at Western Sydney. He goes around with his little, temperature, measures the temperature in playgrounds and schools out there. Technical solutions to problems that we can all get on board on. Working bee. So for John to be trying to push us down this de-amalgamation path, I just think you may be missing an opportunity. The other thing about the de-amalgamation debate, if that's the pro of being a bigger council, I'm not happy to argue that, but also just the futility. People are so confused about what we're going to be voting for. We're voting, it's a yes-no question. Not a good part of the last 6 months that the council has been debating, debating the wording of the arguments. And even John, who's a statistician, right, should have respect for data. We commissioned a big report from Morrison Lowe, great expense, a very well-respected cost-benefit analysis firm. They came back with a report, even John, saying, don't like the report, I want to take out these bits of data because they don't give me the answer I want. Right? It's a bit equivocal. The thing about de-amalgamation is I can almost guarantee it's never going to happen. The only thing you'll be voting yes for, if we vote yes for it, and John's pushing that, we're committed. We have to spend 2 years on this futile kind of tilting at windmills. How do we know it's futile? Well, just look at what happened to Cootamundra, Gundagai Council, Snowy Councils. 2 councils that were forced to amalgamate as well. They've been through a 2-year process to try and argue the case for de-amalgamation. Went through made the case, Boundary Commissioner back to the Minister Shelley Hancock. No. Now, in the case of Cootamundra Gundagai, John Barilaro, ex-Deputy Premier, got behind it. It's a National Party electorate. It's Michael McCormack's federal seat. He was kind of nudging it in that direction. The mayor down there's a bloke called Ab McAllister. He was a big anti-mayor of Gundagai. Up here making lots of noise, anti-amalgamation. He's made the bigger council work, but he's back up here trying to fight it. If any council's going to convince the state government to de-amalgamate them, would have been Coota Gundagai. No. So the chances of old inner city lefties like us convincing the Liberal National Party government to say yes, forget it. And even a Labor Party government, if Labor gets in 2023, really, the Labor councils would have accepted amalgamation. It's just not going to happen. So I'll be telling people, vote no. There's better things we could do. And so that's where John and I part company, I guess, on that aspect. I think that's been. John's also become a bit de facto political, making deals with the Greens. That's going to happen. But, you know, all those 4 candidates, I can work this good parts of all of them. So I guess I started chasing my tail and thinking I was more important than I am, saying, oh, I've got a Zenbra. If I'm going to run as an independent, be an independent. And also, it means that it's sort of up to the voters now. You might think I'm a numpty, happy to stick with the 3 you've got. You might want to give Ben a go instead of, you know, instead of one of the others. Or you might think I can bring something to the party. And for starters, I feel it's a lot simpler, right? You can be simple. There's lots of good about all the candidates, and I think I could add something to all of them. But really, all I've got to focus on for the next 4 weeks is getting out there, explaining who I am, why I want to be part of ward representation, and trying to convince you to put me 1, 2, or 3. It's been weighing on my mind a bit because nobody likes to be called a stooge, and I'm not. If you want to know what I think about something, I will tell you, right? I'll be around. Just come and ask me. The other thing a mate of mine said to me 2 days ago, because it wasn't really, I was thinking, should I be clever and make a deal? You know, I don't want to miss out on potential, or should I be pure than that? He said, mate, it's council politics. I was, yes. I really would like to be part of the next 4 years. I think it'd be really fun and exciting. I'm not going to shoot myself if I don't get elected. You know, we've all got stuff to do.